Hello, and welcome to another video episode of Sean's Check-In. To follow my videos, feel free to go to my professional Facebook page, Sean P. Daughtry, LICSW, or on my YouTube channel, Sean D, Sean's Little Check-In, or Sean's Check-In. Today I wanted to at least touch upon, as much as I can within a short video, the whole concept of dominance and the implications of it on the challenge of developing more and more in the general population reciprocal relationships, as I've defined that term in other previous videos. So dominance is, well, it's a huge topic area. And I may have to extend this into another video besides the one today to be thorough or fair with the topic in relation to cultivating reciprocal relationships and how dominance can be so challenging with that. Dominance, to my understanding, is the capacity of a person or animal, for that matter. All species seem to have dominance, that trait of dominance within a grouping of animals, if you will. Some animals within a species will be more dominant over others. So what am I meaning by dominance, which is what I'm trying to get at here? That is the capacity to have power and control over, for a person's, in this case we're talking humans, a person's capacity to have power and control over other people's sense of agency and actions. I hope that makes sense. The capacity of one individual to have power and control over others' agency and actual actions. That's a working definition I'm offering. And certainly whole groups can be dominant over other groups. So it's not just on an individual basis, it's on a whole group basis as well. But it starts with individuals, and individuals can group together and be dominant over whole other groups. So dominance seems to be a trait, if you will, that is to a certain extent genetic and then environmentally informed. So dominance can come about by a certain person having large amounts of physical strength over others that don't have as much physical strength, for example, or size and strength. But also can be informed very much so by mental capacity or acumen. So someone who has a very keen intellect, with also other things like high processing speed with information, a keen wit, all sorts of other intellectual capacities that can lead a person to be dominant over others who are less mentally or intellectually gifted or able, if you will. And often dominance can be a mixture of both physical strength and mental capacity. And of course, there's a whole range of physical strength and mental capacities that people are born with. And dominance is this trait of having power over others that can come along with these different mix of traits that enable a person to notice their advantage over others that are vulnerable around them and to exploit those advantages and vulnerabilities that they have, their advantages they exploit over the vulnerabilities of others around them that they perceive. I'm not here to spend time splitting hairs about how genetic a trait dominance is versus how it's environmentally informed, but I do know that I, as a therapist, tend to work with people's environmental experiences from childhood on, where dominance and submission gets involved in their lives from experiences, early experiences. Now, in reciprocal relationships, neither dominance nor submission is at play ultimately, as it's just a nice back and forth reciprocity informed by compassion and mutual curiosity between individuals and groups of individuals. So, where do we go with this coping with dominance, which is built in, it seems, to for probably all species? It's definitely informed by basic instinct, if you will. So more the reptilian part of the brain, this capacity to be dominant, at least for people with others, to varying degrees. Some people can be very dominant over lots of other people, and other people can be dominant selectively, but submissive and weaker, that is, around many other people. And that's coming from the survival place, because of the world is a dangerous place, and it's either kill or be killed, or dominate or submit to survive. So that's at a basic instinctual survival place that dominance comes at play. However, with reciprocal relationships, the understanding is life is more than just survival. It's about deep reciprocal connection with others. And going from that survival place into this positive, expansive, reciprocal connection place is a big, big step, not only in human evolution, but in an individual's life too, depending on your experiences. So I work from a place as a trauma therapist with the understanding that people who come to see me have often had a mixed set of experiences of being dominated and having to submit, or dominating in order to survive and not have to submit, or some back and forth mix of that. In other words, being victimized and being a victimizer to some extent. For example, those who've been significantly bullied in school tend to have some experience where they tried to offset that sense of being bullied by selectively here and there where they could, doing some bullying back themselves. So this whole cycle of dominance and submission is something I help people get out of as best as possible more and more, where they create for themselves as best they can an environment of friends, if you will, of social connections, where more and more the relationships are reciprocal and not a mix, if you will, of dominant and dominating and submitting. So that is quite a mouthful there. And I just wanted to give a start around how dominance informs life a lot for people, including within the whole aspect or domain, if you will, of authoritarianism, which is all about dominance and submission, where people who are in power dominate over others, and others follow that and accept the domination and are comfortable in submitting, versus reciprocal relationships where that isn't at play at all, and more of a philosophy of compassion is lived by, thanks to our frontal lobes. As human beings, we have frontal lobes which give us an intellect where we can observe more options than just survival-informed options. So that is this ongoing, I think, struggle we are in as a race, as a human race, to step beyond the survivalist options of dominate or submit into being reciprocal and seeing all possible relationships around us as even positive exchanges that are on an equal playing field, not only between ourselves and other people, but as I've touched briefly upon before, ourselves and other entities around us, or the environment of Earth, for example, around us. And that is a big sea change, if you will, of how to interact with our environment around us. Fortunately, there is a movement of people who want more and more to have life be filled with reciprocal relationships and not about dominance and submission, from that more survivalist oriented, instinctual, informed place. That is where I'm at with the work I do, and I see that others are in that place as well. And I'm just trying to be explicit as best I can about what is part of a much larger movement of where humanity needs to go, which is more from a reciprocal place, even though there's a whole movement or set of movements, if you will, that do not believe that and do not operate from that place and are more used to coming from this dominant submission place, such as through authoritarianism as a big main example. But of course, dominance and submission is experienced over and over again within racial groups or ethnic groups, if you will, such as white people over people of color, heterosexual people over people who are of other sexual orientations, cisgendered people over people who are not cisgendered, men over women, and all sorts of mixes thereof. Also economic, of course, as well. People with money dominating those who don't have money. So there's this constant struggle of this binary, top-down, hierarchical, dominant submission way of relating versus non-hierarchical, reciprocal ways of relating that leaves this survival mode, dominant submission way of seeing the world and living in the world into this more reciprocal place that comes from practicing compassion and curiosity within oneself and all one's parts, since we have different perspectives, or parts, if you will, that dominate other perspectives and parts within us. Whereas if we follow from our own core true selves, which I've touched upon before what I mean by that, and from the perspective of internal family systems that I work from as a psychotherapist, the self is defined as by 8 qualities, all starting with the letter C. Feel free to look up the 8 C's of self. That will pop up online for you very quickly, and you will see a listing of them. Compassion and curiosity are 2 of those 8 C's, and of course I've touched upon those frequently in these videos. There are other qualities listed too. So self is actually this tangible, more or less, concept, and not just this abstract new age woo-woo concept that's vague and amorphous. So the more we lead from self, including curiosity, genuine, just open curiosity and compassion for all of who we are, including these different perspectives, some of them that get in conflict, and from there lead that way towards others around us, the more we can then go into operating from practicing reciprocal relationships out of this dominant submission extreme way of thinking that is easy to do because of that being partly instinctual. But we are more than our instincts. We are also free-thinking individuals with frontal lobes that is unique in the human race, even though for different reasons, those that frontal lobe, big picture, intellectual thinking and understanding can periodically be overtaken or blended over with, if you will, by these fear-based instincts that, of course, is very trauma-informed for many people. And I can get into that in later videos, how trauma gets in the way of, of clear thinking. It's also informed, this dominant submission, it's informed by old cultural values too, not just trauma for individuals, but old cultural values that certain groups are entitled to dominate over others because that's just historically been the case for so long. So people who are born into entitlement of privilege that goes with the entitlement is the privilege can freely think they can dominate because they have been born, they've been raised to believe that. And it gets implied all over in the culture, such as for heterosexual white males in particular in many cultures, and those especially who have a fair amount of money, so are in the middle or upper income brackets. That tends to be understood as the top place of privileged dominance over the rest of us who, to varying degrees, fit somewhere on that hierarchical ladder. So there is the cultural implications of dominance, as well as the old survivalist instinctual implications too, and of course those overlap. Anyway, thank you for listening to this mouthful today about dominance and how it's a challenge for manifesting more and more reciprocal relationships, which is a good, worthwhile endeavor, as challenging as that is to manifest a culture more and more, and cultures worldwide, of reciprocal relationships instead of dominant submission ones. Thank you.